Elizabeth, and here's my audience for my speech. Imagine carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, knowing that it is up to you to continue on in the fight against evil. No, this was not a job for Superman, but this job was left to Winston Churchill to inspire his country to continue on in the fight against Hitler. Winston Churchill's speech, known as the "We Shall Fight on the Beaches" speech, is one of the greatest of the 20th century. Before delving into the speech itself, it would be useful to learn about Winston Churchill himself. Prior to becoming Prime Minister, Churchill was very vocal about his disdain towards the Nazi Germany. It was with this strong conviction that enabled him to become the Prime Minister of Britain. Churchill became the Prime Minister of Britain on May 10, 1940, where he was quickly called on to inspire the House and the country to continue on its fight in World War II. To tell you about this speech, the goal of Churchill's "We Shall Fight on the Beaches" was to inspire the House to continue to fight against the Nazi power. This speech was given to the House of Commons in Britain. This speech was given on June 4, 1940, which was only 25 days after Churchill became the Prime Minister. During this time when the speech was given, France was still in the fight against Hitler, but it was evident that they were soon going to fall out. Also, this speech occurred right after the Dunkirk evacuation. The Dunkirk evacuation was when Britain successfully evacuated thousands of troops that were stranded in France, that were being surrounded by the Germans after the Battle of France. Churchill called this the miracle of Dunkirk, that the troops were able to escape the Germans so that the fight could continue. If this evacuation hadn't occurred, the war would have been lost then. After this event, the country needed to know why they were fighting and that they needed to keep on fighting. This motivation was found in Churchill's "We Shall Fight on the Beaches" speech. This speech was not only motivational with its words, but by how Churchill delivered the speech. This speech was a long speech that started off by citing numbers and stats. This part of the speech was trying to get across the severity of the state that the country was in. But it is not the beginning of the speech that caused it to be a remarkable speech, but it is its ending. Churchill's "We Shall Fight on the Beaches" is a speech that was a continual build. It started off slow, but grew with intensity as it went, climaxing at the end of the speech. It is important to note that it was not the volume of his voice that grew, but it was the intensity of his voice. Churchill utilized his voice to strengthen his delivery. He enunciated and articulated certain words to give meaning. When he spoke the lines, "We shall fight," with growing confidence and growing strength in the air, he gave extra strength and extra emphasis. He also used repetition to create power. By saying "we shall" over and over, he created power with his words. "We shall fight," "we shall defend," and "we shall never surrender" are just a few of the "we shalls" that Churchill used to inspire. In addition, Churchill used well-placed pauses to create emotion. Overall, Churchill spoke with conviction and power to make this speech one of the greatest of the 20th century. With this powerful delivery, the reaction to the speech was equally as powerful. The "We Shall Fight on the Beaches" was one of the 3 important wartime speeches that Churchill gave, all with the result of rallying Britain to believe in their fight against Nazi Germany. Without these speeches, it is fairly safe to say that Britain would have stopped fighting and the war would have been lost. The next reaction comes from the House of Commons. This speech was to help them understand why they needed to continue to fund and to send troops to battle. This speech, particularly in the beginning, helped the House come to terms with the reality of the situation that they were facing. Finally, the overall reaction to this speech was mostly in alignment with the goals that Churchill had set. In his speech, Churchill stated that he was confident that Britain could continue to fight for years by themselves if it came to that, and that if somehow, in the unlikely event that Britain should fall, he believed that Britain could continue to fight until it was free once again. This was followed by applause and brought some of the members of the House to tears, it is noted. Of course, there were those that were skeptical and did not believe in Churchill. Overwhelmingly, however, many people were in support of what Churchill was saying. With a reaction like this, it is clear that the legacy of the speech would live on for years to come. When Churchill gave his speech, people were beginning to question whether Britain should sue for peace. Churchill remained strong in his stubbornness to surrender, expressed in "We shall fight on the beaches" speech. Through this, the fighting continued, which prevented the Nazi regime from taking over the world. The legacy of this speech is one unto its own. As I stated before, this speech was said to the House of Commons. Unlike his finest hour speech, this speech was not broadcasted later that night. Instead, the "We shall fight of the beaches" was not said, and instead, the reason we have a recording of this speech was because Churchill was asked 9 years later if he could say the speech again so they could record it. This proves that it is an important speech, and its legacy was so great that even before there was a recording of it, people were quoting it and people were living out his words. In addition, it was considered such an important speech that he was asked to record it after the war was over. This proves that this speech's legacy is remarkable. The greatest legacy that I believe this speech brought was that with this speech, Churchill taught the country to have courage and to confront the Nazis. In addition, it taught the country to believe in themselves and their ability to win the war. This is the legacy that Churchill left behind with his "We shall fight on the beaches" speech. In conclusion, Winston Churchill's "We shall fight on the beaches" speech is one of the greatest of the 20th century. With his strong delivery, it led to an immediate reaction, and this reaction created a lasting legacy that lives on. Churchill truly shall fight on forever with this speech. Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes?
My question is, had Hitler's armies actually been on England's soil prior to this speech?
Continually, I do not believe so, but there was continual bombings throughout the entire war. So, no, the German army was not on the beach, but they were bombing throughout.
So England was feeling the effect of Hitler's
Absolutely.
armies.
There was the bombings of Britain.
So he was trying to rally the country.
Yes. Yes.
In your presentation, you showed on the slides and said that it was not recorded that night. Why was it not recorded that night? Why did he do it 9 years later?
Because I think at this point they didn't even know to broadcast it. It is said that his finest hour speech, which was the next wartime speech that he gave, was broadcasted, but with this "We shall fight on the beaches," they either didn't think or they didn't have the technology available at that time to broadcast it.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to my speech.